Hello, hello. This is Mina, and you are listening to the 2K Days podcast. More and more people are realizing that business can be an extremely powerful force for good if you could just figure out your marketing. On this show, you'll hear from amazing impact entrepreneurs and learn effective new strategies to help you generate revenue and radical change with your conscience intact.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Schlossberg. I am one half of the Schlossberg clan. Actually, I'm 1/6, and we can get into that in a little bit. And I am a professional actor who has transitioned into an expert marketer, especially in the field of creative lead generation. I work with my wife, and it's funny. We were talking about this. You know how we were unconventionally wealthy for a while, which we're no longer at. Been talking about it later is that is a byproduct of us living an improbable life. And so it's kind of shifted in the way we've been perceiving it and doing things. And so we choose to live improbably. We homeschool our kids. We have 4 kids, 8, 6, 4, and 2. Fun note, all born within 2 weeks, first 2 weeks of December. So it's a nutty time of year. And we work for ourselves, and we do it all from home. So what I like to tell people, in the 8 years we've been married, we've probably spent more time together than most 50-year marriages because we're together 24/7. But back to your question, who I am, again, marketer, like that. We've literally got into marketing so that we could have the life that we want, so we could do the things we wanted, to raise our kids the way we wanted, and have fun doing it.
And the story of how you ended up getting into marketing is actually pretty interesting. Yeah, the two of you spend a lot of time together now, but it sounds to me like that's always kind of been the case one way or another.
Okay, you are correct. So we met in Hollywood, waiting tables, because survival job, and we were opening up a restaurant. And so, we didn't own it, we were servers there. And the GM was like, "Hey, Sasha, you're gonna love this guy. He's the male version of you." And they knew each other, and so you're gonna get along with this person. And we became friends. I was just out of a divorce, and I was on sort of I was on my, as Sasha calls it, my trampage stage, and having fun. And we just hit it off and became like friends, to the degree like I created her dating profile, she created my dating profile, and then one thing led to another. And to be completely honest, it was like, instead of looking for all the wrong reasons in her, I started looking at all the right reasons. And so we actually ended up, during all that time, she'd go somewhere and bring me to work, or I'd go somewhere and bring her along to work. So we were working together at like 4 restaurants. Then we started dating, and we were like, oh, let's do something. Real estate. And then when 2 tests into real estate, we're like, this is not for us. And then we got invited to a network marketing party. A casting director, I was having it, and I was like, I want to go to hang out with the casting director. I was like, Sasha, do you want to go to this? And she was like, yeah, as long as you're okay with me and us signing up. And I was like, oh, okay. This gal is dope, because I was like, most people are going to be like, run for the hills. And this is before I knew all about it and all that sort of stuff. So we went, we were like, oh, this is easy. We'll do this. Thought we were going to get rich, struggling actors, no influence. Doesn't work. I mean, literally did everything they said, and it just didn't work. Cut to, Sasha got pregnant, and I'll kind of shorten this up. Sasha gets pregnant. It's her first child. Horrible morning sickness. Like, literally just took her out for the first trimester. Took her out, like throwing up 10 times a day, that kind of thing. Like the things you hear about. And this company was a party, face-to-face sort of thing. So it just decimated what we had built. And she had heard of this unicorn called working online, building a business online. And so she did some research, and we found a company, and we started doing that. And then we found our mentor, who was like a 7 or 8 figure internet marketer, and started following him and working with him and cutting his teeth, and like cutting our teeth, like working with him. And then I actually became the VP of operations of his publishing company, and Sasha became lead strategist. And we learned by doing. We learned Facebook ads, we learned branding, building sites. I had learned SEO before, Facebook ads, like everything you could do, we learned by actually being in the trenches of it. And on the same day of the same year, pregnant with our second, his company runs out of funding. So we both at the same time lost our job. So we both went from making this to zip. And we're like, what are we gonna do? And so we were actually at a friend's house in their pool, and they had their own agency and sold it. And they were like, and we were already working with our birth center, and we were working with our chiropractor. She's like, start an agency. We're like, she's like, you're already working with two people in a niche. And obviously the holistic health space, they serve, but they're not necessarily the best business minded folks. Like very rarely is it. So we're like, oh, okay. We didn't know anything about it. So we have an agency now. Little did we know we weren't really an agency. We were like, two people doing it all by ourselves. And so we did that. A lot of local businesses, like good successes, ups and downs, and all of this, like trying to get people for Facebook ads. It's like, hey, I'll run them for free, or then we'll get paid. And like all the stuff that you hear and you see and you do. And then we were like, this is like Christmas Eve in church. I'm like literally in church, like fixing one of my clients' Facebook ads. And we looked at each other and we're like, no, we were spending way too much time, way too much energy, way too much on demand for others, that it just was like, this is not what we signed up for. And that was how we started making the shift into sort of like the coaching space and sort of the mentoring space, if you will. And so we've been doing it for over a decade. I like to say I'm really good. I'm the extrovert. I'm the kind of like the sales guy, the tech systems automations kind of piece, really good at like strategy and all of that. But Sasha, when it comes to like content, messaging, strategy, like that she is just like an interstellar expert. Like Ninja doesn't even like capsulate it. Like she's just, and Mina, she's the best in the world at it.
I will vouch. That is absolutely true.
And so that's kind of our story too, like how we've gotten to where we are. And during that time, thanks for asking, we've had 4 kids.
Yes.
Like Sasha was like, I want kids 2 years apart. And I maybe took that a little literally. And so it's like December 3rd, December 13th, December 10th, December 2nd, all 2 years apart.
Wow.
Yeah. So we do that. And it works for us. It isn't easy. It isn't for everybody. It takes a lot of intentional work. Sasha is built for it in the sense of like patience and ability. I am growing that capacity. Someday, like I would say we'd probably be an 8 to 9 figure business if we put our kids in school or didn't have kids. But it's also not the thing that like would have fulfilled us. And because we were talking about this, the ethical nature of it, in the space that we're in, there aren't checks and balances. There isn't like a governing body. So it's like there's a lot of people out there, and you hear it all the time, that like will just take your money, or they like won't deliver what they say they're going to do. Or I've talked to a lot of people recently where they've put 50 to 100K in to get this or that, and they haven't seen a dime. And that's just not something we're ever good with. Like we've signed up for programs, and like hasn't been the right fit. And we're just like, okay, well, we're just going to pay for it, even if we don't finish it, because that's just that's our commitment to it or whatever. And so that's just how we run our business. I was like, if we didn't have kids and we didn't have these values that we have, our life we'd be a billionaire. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but it's the end of the day, I can put my head on my pillow and feel good about who I am, because I know I'm living a life that my kids can look at and like I'll instill good values in them. Well, I've talked for a while.
Thank you. I'm glad that you did. Everything that you just said is completely priceless. And I'm trying to figure out now if we should talk about how to collaborate your way to a healthy marriage, or uh raising kids in a business, or right, or just the business. But I have to hammer in that the reason I asked you here and to represent the kind of marketing and coaching space is because there are so many people who face the decisions that you're talking about facing. Do I this or that?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have kids, or do I build my company? And they choose what makes sense and not what they really want in either direction.
It's an interesting point because I think had I been left to my own devices, I would not be here with 4 kids. I would have been fine with 2, right? But I will tell you, I couldn't imagine my life without these 4, like at all. And there are days, look, we're all parents. We've had them, we know them. Pull your hair out. Oh my goodness. But I wouldn't change it for the world. Um, it doesn't mean that it's easy. Doesn't mean that there aren't days that I wish it were different, like in moments. But like as I've said to other people, you'll never look back and go, man, I shouldn't have had that kid. Right? I really focused on my business. When you die, they're not going to put on your tombstone, he worked a lot. He built a successful business. You know what I mean? So it's like you will regret the things that you don't do in terms of like at least this is for me. I can't speak for everybody else. Maybe somebody else is like, you know what, for some people, it's a better choice not to have kids. But if you want to have kids, I'm a firm believer of the universe is expansive enough to allow for it all. You can't put 100% energy at 2 things at the same time. But why not have a different construct of it? Why can't you have a beautiful family and grow your family and have a very successful business? Why do we say it has to be hard work? Why can't it be fun, easy work and still reap the benefits? Like all of those things. And I've had to learn a lot of this. And I'm still unlearning old behaviors and patterns. I'm not the perfect dad. I have my moments. I've been working a lot on myself in terms of how I can show up in my capacity, and it takes time. But we've also been focusing a lot on quantum leaping in our life and what that looks like and how you do it, right? And I've always thought of myself as the person that's that outlier. Like, I know you can change, but I'm the one that's stuck, which is just stupid because it's not true. But I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. So if you feel that way, just know you can make a different choice. You can have it be true in the moment. Like, hey, I can't have my business and a family. Sure you can. Who's to say you can't? Right? And so I don't think anyone should limit themselves based upon what other people say. And if you're limiting yourself based upon what you're saying to yourself, maybe it's time to check what you're saying to yourself. Are you then living the life that you want to live?
Right. I mean, that's wise advice. So how do you do it? How do you prioritize, or how do you make decisions in the moment?
In regards to what? Parenting, business, all of the above?
Both. Like picking and choosing. For instance, I regularly feel very guilty about having to tell my kids, sorry, I have to get on a meeting, or sorry, I have to finish this, even if they've just gotten the entire rest of the day.
I think for us, it started early on. Communication and trust are 2 of the biggest foundations for us. And so, like, there is literally, like, there isn't an inkling, like a teardrop in all of the oceans of doubt that, like, I could let her go off and do anything she wants. Like, there's none of that. And we talk about things, and if there's issues, and like we fight, and we're learning to disagree differently. And that's a lot on me and my growth because I had a role model that wasn't necessarily the best in that regard. But those 2 things, and we knew what our values were in the beginning and what we wanted to do and where we were going, and they've shifted along the way. But like how we navigate it is discussion, trying things, testing things. Sasha's great at that though. So I take my hat off to her. Things aren't working. She's like, I'll come up with a new system for it. Like, again, left to my own devices, I'm 10 years older. I'm like a boulder. Like, I'll just keep on rolling through and be like, I'll make this work, like that sort of thing. But we try different things. And so it's like, I mean, this is our perfect week. And it's like, it used to be like chaotic all over. You work here, do this, do this, do this. And then we're like, okay, now we're going to try time blocking a little bit more so we can have more time. Or, hey, we're raising the kids this way and we're going to try this and it's not working. So, okay, this is working. It's really conversations, I would say research, and gotta see what works. Every day is different in our house. You know, kids could do an amazing bedtime one night and you're like, okay, what did I do? This. You do it the next night and they go sideways and you're like, well, what the fuzz? I did the same thing. So it's, we're humans. We treat our kids like humans, like people, because they are, who have opinions. Even our 2-year, like, since from the time they're born, though, we've treated them like humans and we give them choices. But it's challenging.
That's amazing.
I need to work. She needs to work. Who gets to work? Right? So we have the sections and figuring, or it could be, okay, we need to shoot some more lessons for this class, our program. Well, I'm not shooting them. Okay, you take the time to shoot them. That's the most important thing. Okay, Jonathan, we need to get this automation set up, or you've got some calls. Okay, this is your time. But it's also putting it in the calendar and saying, these are the times that you can call and people can book on Mondays and Fridays. We've tried it booking every day. We've tried it booking on 2 days. We've tried it and so it's like, until just keep, and it'll change. Guaranteed, it'll change. So that's how you do it. Constant communication.
I love this so much because what you exhibit for your clients and what I've seen from you is, I see the values, I see the prioritizing, I see the communication, the problem solving on such a higher level than I do with absolutely any other marketing, at least that I can think of. And I've run an agency myself. And to hear that all of these things are just the simple version of how you're running your home, that dedicating yourself to your family is why Guud Marketing is so much better than so many other agencies.
No, I appreciate that. It's funny you say that because, so I'll give you an example of a conversation we just had. When Sasha and I got together, we were each other's most important thing, right? Your MIT. Then we had kids, and Sasha was my most important thing, but the kids became hers, right? So that creates disjointedness. It doesn't. Granted, this has been 8 years. We just had a conversation where I said, you're my most important thing. The kids are your most important thing. We're not each other's. Therefore, we are not being our best selves to each other, right? Because we've been talking about quantum jumping in our lives and all this. And I was like, how do we do this if I don't feel like I'm important as important to you? And I come behind them. And people might say, you got to make your kids feel like the most important thing. And I said to her, in 2 conversations in the past week, we've heard 2 people say they put the spouse first. And I said, let me ask you this question. You put the kids first, they're going to model that. Do you want our daughter to get in a relationship where then she has kids, and instead of having the relationship where her significant other is the most important thing and has that bond, she's putting it on the kids, which then takes away from that? Or do you want to model the parents having an amazing relationship that then they feel? And I'm not judging her, because I think it's a natural thing to go, I put the kids first. Don't get me wrong. There was a burning building. She's going to save the kids before she saves me, because I'm going to be responsible for myself. Now, I'm going to carry all of them out, but that's different. And she's like, oh, and it finally made sense to her, because what had happened is I made it went from this to this, but then it became this. If you're watching this, that makes sense. But if you're listening, basically it was like we were each other's, then it went like two directions. Me to her, her to the kids. And then I became more selfish for myself because somebody had to take care of me. And we've really this is, I'm talking days old now, this conversation. The shift has been instantaneously. I've shifted, she's shifted, like all of those things. Those are the things that are important. Are you on the same page? Are you growing together? When I met Sasha, I was leaps and bounds ahead of her in terms of the self-development work and all of that, how to communicate. And I will tell you, I got complacent and she's kind of leapt over me in a lot of ways. Now I'm like, oh shit, I better catch up, or, I'm gonna get left in the dust. Because you're either growing, you're thriving, or you're dying. Nothing stays in the middle. And if one person grows and the other person doesn't, the person that's growing is gonna go, you're holding me back. And I want to go somewhere else. Now, if you grow and you don't have the communication and the conversation and the intention to grow together, there is a much likelier chance that you're going to grow apart, because it takes the time, energy, effort, and work. It takes the communication. It takes you being invested in the other, in my opinion.
It's not just an opinion. So I actually want to hear more about this. Right before I gave birth to our first son, my mother-in-law gave me an article from a magazine that explained to me all of the things that I needed to have done for my husband before I went to the hospital. Have his clothes laid out for the week and meals packaged and all of these things. And it really got me thinking, like, in that moment, I decided that I was going to raise my son very, very differently. And thank goodness I handed this thing over to my husband and he was like, what the hell is this? But all of that to say, men aren't taught that they need to do these things. My spouse or my male partner doesn't talk to me is a very constant complaint for most partners to men. Where did you figure this out? And where do you find, I guess, the courage and dedication to go through with speaking your heart that way?
I would say it was probably how I was raised. I had a mother and a father, but like much more impact maternally in communication and feelings. But if you're looking at human design and if you're looking at those things, I'm an emotion. And so I've always been that way. And it's funny, you hear this, it's like men don't know how to communicate. Many don't. Or they do, they just don't know how to do it in a way that allows feelings, right? And I think it's shifting a lot. I do feel like it's shifting. There's a generation that's sort of dying out. The old World War II, must provide, don't ask about money. The wife is in the kitchen, doesn't have a checking. Like those things are slowly but surely going off of the wayside. But I can't speak for other people. I don't know how. I like to surround myself with people that are able to have those conversations, that are open. I tend to personally get along and relate better with those of the feminine because communication is easier. The wall is down, the guard isn't up. I think men and ego together, oftentimes it's not real communication, so for me, it's like you say that having get ready to do list, it's like for your husband, part of me is like, oh, that would be nice. Like, what kind of hallucination world are we living in? Because that is just not something that like would happen. It was like what's the list that we need to have to do to be ready for pregnancy, right? But I'm also the guy that like we had a doula, but I wanted to do all of it. I was pissed that I missed the water breaking because I went out to like say something to the family that was there. Like I was actively involved. Kids 2, 3, and 4, 2 and 3 were birth center. I essentially did 98% of it. Like 98% of it, from catching to giving birth, like all she, I mean, she did 100%. Don't get me wrong. I don't want any of the women identifying, people who are women having children saying, oh, this guy, he didn't do anything. No, but, and then our last Brighton home birth, like I did it. Like, but that's how I want to be a part of it. So it's a choice. We also set ourselves up, I think, to be equals, which I think is important. I believe in a lot of relationships. I would guess, I don't know, the dynamic is different.
I wonder if that's by design or by choice. I know one of the things that I study on a very regular basis is how social expectations really kind of psychologically isolate men. There are more and more studies about how much happier and healthier men are when they are that involved in, say, the birth of their children versus not being. And as far as the male parent being involved, they have every bit the same amount of regulatory influence, say holding baby skin to skin as the mother, release the same amount of oxytocin as a mother. So, I mean, I have given birth 3 times unmedicated, and I can't imagine anyone I would rather have had in the room than my husband for all 3 of those.
I mean, it would have been kind of strange if like the Amazon delivery guy was there. But, no, but I agree with you. It's like Sasha's had 4 childbirths. But it was our choice. It was important to us to do it. I believe that probably the people that are listening to this, people like you and me, do more by design. But I think most people, are like clicking the remote control. Next channel, what's on TV. They're not. They're humdrumming along. It's easier. May not be it's not comfortable, but it's the comfort that they know, and it's easy. And I've been there. I've been down in the dumps, or and thank goodness I have a partner that is like willing to call me on my garbage, or like be there to help me like get my head screwed on straight. I just came out of a funk, because that can happen. I work with her. Like I am equally as valuable, equally as important, equally as talented, but right now our focus is on her program, and she's a little bit more of the face of it. So like there's this male part of me that's like, yeah, I may be talking to people and enrolling them into our program and collecting the money and connecting in that sense, but she's the one making the money essentially. And there's a part of me that's like, well, what's my value? That male masculine piece. And I've had to like do that work, And so it's just literally like, there's constantly going to be shifts and changes. There's constantly going to be things you need to look at to grow. There's constantly going to be things that you just don't know. And it's, how do you choose to look at them? How do you choose to navigate them? And what do you want? And where do you want to go? And this is really easy for me to say to you right now, because we're sitting here having a serious conversation about it. But when life is happening, you don't ask, you may not stop to ask those questions. I know I'm not batting 1,000% over here. I don't want anybody listening to this to think, hey, this guy, he's telling us all this stuff and saying these things, and who's this guy thinking he's perfect? I am far from. But it's the things I know. But what's the habit of how often are you looking back and talking about it, doing it, practicing it? Are you just letting the world push you along? Like those are the things you get to look at, and you can change it in a moment. You can say right now, fuck it. I'm done this way. Let's do something different. It's going to be hard or challenging. I wanted to stop yelling and screaming, being angry and going to that emotion. You know what? That's what I lived in for my parents' relationship, my dad, my life all of this stuff I'm 48 years old for so many years. Well, does that mean it shifts immediately? Can it shift immediately? Yes, instantaneously. But to make sure it stays, I have to continue to embed that piece of it, look back as to why. That's how you make the massive leaps and the massive jumps, is change, like the story of David and Goliath. David was a sheep farmer, right? And in one moment, he went from a sheep farmer to a gladiator, just by saying, I will do this fight. You can shift your identity faster than you can, snap your fingers. That's why it's called quantum. There are infinite possibilities. Like go see Ant-Man, the new Ant-Man. There are infinite possibilities where everything is possible. So why not pick the thing that best serves what you want? Okay, soapbox.
But it is a fight. Yeah, that's why I asked you here, though. It is a fight. And now I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, as do you, and they go and they buy the next program, they hire another agency. This type of problem solving doesn't tend to come out when we're talking about growing a business. And it's probably because it doesn't tend to come out when we're talking about growing ourselves. So how do you rebound when you relapse?
One, I am thankfully lucky to have a family and a partner that will call me on my shit and ask me the hard questions. But it's a matter of like having those tools be strong enough that like when something is going wrong, I know what to pick up to get me out of that situation. Like this morning before our call, we do family golf. We've just started doing family golf, and but to get 6 of us out of the house is an insane process. And the kids weren't cleaning up and they were all over the place. And I just went to what I normally do, is I sit on the couch and I go, oh, I guess we're just going to be late. Active choice. And Sasha called me on the phone from the bedroom. Our house isn't that big. Just called me and said, we found a way for her to talk to me to where I don't get triggered because she's not talking about me. But she goes, are you, and then, feel free to take this, is video game Jonathan, because we had a conversation about video game Jonathan is different than Jonathan. It was fabulous, fantastic. Making the choice to do this, because if video game Jonathan is doing this, we are going to be late. And I was like, yeah, got off the phone. Yeah. And I stood up and I changed everything, right? You just have to take a counter action. Sometimes that counter action feels like you're like deadlifting 1,000 pounds. You feel like shit. You're overweight, you're not overweight, you're having a bad day, go for a walk. You know this, I know this, everybody knows this. Go for a jog, get some sweat, whatever. Do some push-ups. It's that thin line of like where you are and what you need to do. And that thin line is just the action of doing. But more often than not, the habit, the muscle gets strengthened of just sitting here. And so yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. And also the muscle can get strengthened in the other direction. It does take time, but it does become habitual.
Yeah. Because for some weird, odd reason, it feels better to sit in your sulk. Right?
It's validating. Let's call it what it is. It's validating. I don't feel good. I'm going to validate that for myself by stewing in it.
Yes. And that's just plain old stupid. Because it's like, ooh, here's a warm bath of validation. And there's some nice warm bubbles too. And it's like, no, like, but I don't think if I didn't have the partner, I'd like to say that I would, but I don't think if I didn't have the partnership that I have, that I would be able to rebound fast, make the different choices, be where I am and go where I'm going. as quickly as strongly, you know?
You're listening to the 2K Days podcast for rebel business leaders who want to generate more revenue and radical change. If you're loving what you're hearing, be sure to like this episode and subscribe for more.
Yeah, it does help to have help.
Yeah, it does, but I think everybody has to have help. I think everybody has to have some form of coach. I mean, I don't want my wife is not my coach. She can coach me. I've coached her. She hates when I coach her. That's a whole nother podcast episode. But like having the skills to be able to do that, but also knowing that you are where you are based upon the things you know. The only way to get a different result is to take different actions, but you're going to 99.9% of the time take the same actions because it's what you know.
So how does this come up for your kids? Do you coach your kids, or do you follow some traditional parenting methods, or how do you approach that?
Oh, parenting. Nice segue. So, have you seen the show The Parent Test?
No, I'm writing it down.
It is on Hulu. It is a show where they take I think it's 8 or 10 different parents of kids, couples, singles, all sorts of stuff. And they're all self-identified as different styles of parenting, from free range to negotiation to helicopter, all of this. And they do these tests to see how the kids are doing, and then people get voted off and all that sort of stuff. And it's really interesting to see best parenting styles and what works. And so I think for us, we try a lot of different things. I'm like, we're not a helicopter parent, but we're not a negotiation parent. We're not free range. We're not traditional. But we what I do see is we take the best parts of all the things. I think when it comes to parenting our kids, our job is to raise them with the skills so that they, at the end of the day, are alive and they survive. But also so that we can instill good values and they can make good choices and be good people. We have intelligent kids who like to question and push boundaries, which can be incredibly frustrating and difficult. I mean, unlike your kids who try to kill you, I see, with their amazing, I don't even what you call that, but
They're
secret
engineers.
attack. Yeah.
They're engineers.
I've seen that. I was impressed. There's a lot of things. It's we'll try this, we'll try that, we'll see what works. And they're all different. What will work with my son will not work with my daughter, will not work with the other daughter. And they're all different ages. So it's different things too. My son is me. Very emotional, very active, has a thing about being left out and being heard and all of these things, and is of the age where he does not have the capacity to restrain, so it's how do we work with that? Are there consequences? Do you have conversations? Do they have timeout? Do they get reward? All of those things, right? We wouldn't go we go somewhere. We're not the quiet family where the kids are all perfectly behaved. Kids are loud. They know the right thing to do. We rein them in when they need to, but it's not like they're, something yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, Sam. We try to do some of that where it's understood, but we also, or you could call that discipline, but we also allow them to have a voice. And they, that might be the challenge is we've talked to them as humans. We've treated them with humans. We've given them choices from the moment they were born. Like Rylan, when he was born, we had 2 names and we literally asked him his names and he responded to Rylan. He chose his name. They've had choice from the get-go, right? So why would it be any different? Now and then it's hey, don't take the golf club and smash it into the green. Hey, don't take the golf club and smash it. Let me hold those golf clubs for you, right? That sort of thing. But But I don't know. People always ask us all the time, how do you do it with 4? It's got to be insane. And I'm like, well, what did it feel like when you had 0 when you went to 1? It was insane, right? Well, then you get used to 1 and then you go to 2. And that's a learning curve. It's not like I went from 0 to 4. That would have been nuts and I wouldn't be like, I would have sunk. But it's like boiling the frog. You put the frog in the water, then you turn the heat up, and then it doesn't know it's being cooked. I'm the unknown cooked frog, if you
Yeah,
will.
I can tell that I've been cooked. I don't know what's after that, but
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think people think it's outlandishly crazy. Like when we were in Phoenix, because we're in California now. Yeah, maybe sometimes we get odd looks, right? But 4 kids in Phoenix is like not abnormal. Like you'd have to have like 6 kids in that like huge giant Nissan Sprinter van thing. And then you get people going, oh,
Mhm.
here it's like 4 kids. You don't see, I mean, if you see a group with 3, I'm like, oh, kindred. Because 4 is like, people are like, how do you do it? How can you afford it? And all these things. And how do you raise them? And blah, blah, blah. It's like what you just do. Would it be easier with 2? I could raise 2 kids like with both hands tied behind my back, like, and blindfolded because I've been doing 4 for this long. But I don't take anything away from the person that's like, I cannot, like, I cannot know what 2 is too much. Everybody has
Yeah.
the capacity, and it doesn't make them right or wrong. And like, if somebody had 2 and they're like 2 is too much, and then they had 3, yeah, it's too much. But then they figure it out.
Yep, that was certainly me. Number
Yeah.
3 was I swear my husband cast a spell. The boys were like, we want a baby sister. We want a baby sister every single day. Daniel Tiger. Then he goes and makes a budget. And the next thing I know, I've got the flu. And here she comes. We're 6 days apart. But you figure it out. It's especially when you're already good at communicating and, being aware of personalities when you're looking at children as little people who are building new aspects of themselves all the time. Just like any other relationship, you're learning more about someone all of the time.
Oh yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are lots, if not most moments, I'm like, God, just do what I say. Just listen to me. But then they're not getting to be themselves, right? And the things they're doing now, first of all humans, especially kids, are designed to push boundaries, right? That's how you figure out the safe zone, whatever. And so it's, yes, push their boundaries, but the skills, the things that they're allowed to experience and say and do will serve them better in the long run. Okay, yes, if I drop an F-bomb or say something like this and then like they start repeating it, no, that's not good, right? In terms of like, is that appropriate? Absolutely not. But okay, if you're going to do that, I'm going to say don't do it. Or if you say it out in public, there's going to be a different reaction than if you're joking around in the house. And those are 2 different things. So they get to know the difference of that. Like it's one of Sasha's favorite shows is Fringe. When we were dating, we watched the whole thing. So our kids love science, very engineer, like yours, like love the fantastical. So we started watching season 1 of Fringe with my 8 and my 6-year-old. Now, is it a 8 and a 6-year-old show? It's a PG rated, but like the first episode has like the person's face, like their skin like falls off of them. And my daughter got really scared. And my mom was like, they don't have the emotional capacity to deal with that. You shouldn't be putting that in their head. And on one hand, I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying. But the other hand is like, yes, they have this imagination. And my oldest tends to be very like empathic, intuitive feeling and all of that. So like, there's that aspect. But she got to sit there with my wife and we got to have a conversation about it. So it's like, it's special effects. And we didn't know, we forgot that this episode was going to be, because when it came on, I was like, what are you letting our kids watch? But I was just like, let's go, but it's like, have the conversation, and this is special effects. It's not real, and those sort of things. And then we can have the discussion rather than it be this thing where they don't know. And from that to body parts to all of those things, in the show we were watching, this 13-year-old didn't know body parts, or they had like male, female body parts, didn't know where they were, what they were called, and pet names for them. And it's like, well, us from the beginning, it's the scientific name for it, and these are what they are, and you don't have to be ashamed or embarrassed or anything like that. That's just how we choose to live, and it works for us most of the time.
I hope you don't feel bad about the French thing, because that's happening to all of us 80s and 90s kids, is we're like, oh yeah, let's watch Rugrats again. Or, oh my gosh, what was it that we watched with the kids? The Labyrinth.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's creepy, scary.
But we watched it at the same age, Now we just know better.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody has to raise their kids the best way they know how. Run your life the best way you know how. I don't subscribe to someone saying, this is how you need to do it. This is the thing you have to follow. This is the right way, right? Like, you can look at all the different styles of parenting and you'll find successes and failures in both, right? You'll find the disciplinarian family where they have like children that are like super successful and disciplined, but then you'll have the people that completely rebel and go the other direction and end up homeless. So it's like, it's not necessarily the style, it's how people respond and react. I do not function, I don't thrive on negative feedback based. So like, if I'm in a sport or if I'm working on stuff and you're going, come on, man, stop screwing up, or blah, blah, you could do better, I'm like, that doesn't feel good. I don't like that. And I'm not saying that. It's just, where someone's like, dude, great job. That was awesome. I want to see, like, I love what you just did there. I'm like, let me do more. Where there's some people where it's like negative feedback gets them to thrive more. So it's knowing those things. It's knowing what your kids respond to, how you respond to things, because all of those things are going to really make a difference on what happens for you in your life. Does someone who gets in a horrific accident and loses both of their legs end up sad and miserable and like angry at the world? Or do they become an inspirational, motivational speaker around the globe? Both happen.
Right. And knowing and managing and figuring out, caring to figure these things out about people are important in all relationships. So I want to hear about how these skills help you in your business and working with clients.
That's interesting. I think I've grown and shifted a lot. I used to just kind of be, as I said earlier, the boulder. Like, I would say the thing because I'm pretty straightforward. Like, here's the thing I think what's about Sasha and I, and you can I would say you will confirm this, but let me know, is what you see is what you get. Like, when you see us out there, or like, hey, us talking on this, how I'm being in my business, how I would show up if we went and had a cup of coffee is the same. There's no different person. If I go and speak on a stage and then somebody comes up, it's like, I'm that same person, where there's some people that become this version of themselves here, but they're really not like that. And I don't like that because it feels inauthentic. It doesn't feel like, it feels like a bait and switch. And I'm not a big bait and switch person. So to answer your question, how I deal with it, like, I've had to cut back on like wearing my heart on my sleeve and saying the things, because like I'll say the things, and sometimes I realize, and also neurodivergence and realizing I'm ADHD and all of these things, not to make an excuse, is like not realizing sometimes how it'll land or how my tone can hit somebody. I'm the person, if you have a booger in your nose, I'm going to tell you. If you have the food in your teeth, I'm going to tell you, because I want someone to do it to me. And that's like a sort of a different way, but that's the thing. Maybe if something isn't great, do you want me to say anything? Do you want my input? How do you want me to handle it? But if you ask, most people don't want the real truth. If it sucks, try to sandwich it between two nice things. You opened really well. The meat of it didn't really hit its mark, and like you lost people, but like you did a great job walking off the stage. I mean, like, and that's just a weird out of my mind example, but it's like, I've learned not to just go, man, you sucked. It's become second nature to me in how I deal with my clients, and just with people in general. I think a lot of what we do is trying to work with our clients in a way where they can use us as a sounding board or for feedback, where we're actually teaching people how to be autonomous without us. I think it'd be great if a client had us for life and just kept paying us, you know what I mean? But like, my goal is not to have someone beholden to me. I want people to be able to learn this stuff so they can do it on their own, right? And utilize us in higher capacities. I would venture to bet that like some of the reasons why like our clients love working with us are because we're open. We allow them to feel heard while still giving them these strategies to create their own success, but not in a you have to do this. We give it to them as a choice. And we're like crazy talented at what we do. And that's challenging for me to say, because sometimes I question like my ability. But when I think about it, it's like we're fucking crazy talented at what we do. And to say that feels like, oh, here's this guy puffing his chest. But like sometimes you have to own who you are. Right. So it's knowing you have the skills, knowing you know how to impart those to other people, being there to support, and know that when I'm working with you, Mina, I'm holding you in my heart. I'm holding your thing. And that is important. And we care. One of our biggest faults early on, and we had to sort of separate ourselves, is we cared more about people's success, their business, than they cared about it. And we had to stop doing that, because that just sets us up for like a dysfunctional, horrible relationship where we end up hurt and sad. And that's not what you want. It's not healthy. People have to want it as much, well, more than we want it for them. They have to, you know? And so people be like, how do you do that? I want to be able to have this relationship with my partner and raise my kids and do this homeschool. Do you really? Like, do you really? If it's what you want, you have to do the work to do it. It isn't for everybody, but you can have a beautiful relationship and work with your spouse or raise your kids and do all these things. That just has to be your intention. That has to be the focus. And that has to be the thing that you actually put the energy towards. And no, it's a learning, growing process. We didn't start out with this going, hey, this is easy. We started out working together, then started adding kids to the mix. Again, we boiled the frog. Do you want to boil yourself? Do you want to be the frog?
Ultimately, that's so it. I love
That's the
that.
title of this episode. Do you want to be the frog? Well, Sasha always says, because she's military too, it's the eat the frog.
Oh, right. Oh, they do say that.
It's because like do the hard thing first, which in a weird way makes sense. And it's also like eat the frog, or like, you know, it's like, well, okay. It's do the thing that, you know, yeah, just if you get it out of the way, if you wake up and you do the thing, we don't need to go down that road. But yes, be the frog, boil yourself slowly.
So now I have to ask you, now, with everything that we've talked about and everything else on your mind, what is the one thing that you wish everyone knew about living the life they desire?
Ooh, that is a good question. So the first thing is knowing, like, having the life that you dream of, the life that you want to live, right, comes down to an intention. But it also comes down to you thinking outside of the box. It comes down to, like, what do you want? What does that look like? What does that look like in colors and feelings and all of these things? And having a clear idea of that, or some sort of idea. It doesn't have, like, when I close my eyes and picture something, I'm not a visual, I don't get an image of it, but I get like a feel, like those sort of things. So knowing what you want it to be, right? So say it's working from home with your significant other and having 4 children all born within 2 weeks, 2 years apart, like that sort of thing. And adventure and fun. Maybe it's adjectives that go with it. Having a sense of what those things are, right, is important. And if it's with your spouse, here's the thing: when it comes to visioning, when it comes to manifesting, when it comes to creating things, it's having the conversations. We've just started doing the what ifs. What if in a year, like literally just started doing yesterday, what if in a year from now we were both driving matching Teslas? What if we took the kids on a 2-week, skiing trip in the Alps? What if, right? So how about you're doing that? Or the things you want to do, or what are the things you want to do, and making a list of the things that you actually want. So there's that. But it goes back to the word I think I said really early on, is the improbable. Do you choose to live an improbable life? If you choose the probable, if you choose the practical, that's what you're going to end up with, right? We talk a lot about the in-between. Sasha does. Like the level, think about it. Your life in this, we have this thing called The Level. It's a 3-video series that Sasha created, that is free. It's fantastic, that you should give people, which will be in the show notes.
It'll be in the show
But
notes.
it's like, if you think about it, like, the growth doesn't become where you are and where you get to, right? Those are just the markers. The growth comes in the space between. Climb a diving platform, go to a 60-meter diving platform, right? You start climbing up the ladder, you're on the ground. Well, you get to the first platform, you're like, I'm here. Well, the growth was you getting there. Then you're like, I'm going to keep going. The result is you getting to the second one and the third and to the top, and you're 60 meters above the water. The growth was actually taking the steps. And so that's the most important thing. So many people are like, oh, the destination. Oh, the destination. I'll have kids when I have enough money. I'll start my business when it's the right time. I'll join this program when. The fact is the world is constantly shifting. Things are always happening. Other things may come up. All of those pieces, right? Or if the destination is so specific, like, for example, going to Mars, right? If you're like, I'm heading to Mars, and you don't hit Mars, you're fucked, because that's where you're going. And then, so it's during that trip, you have to constantly re-alter your course to make sure. A rocket is off course 98% of the time. All it is doing is adjusting its course to get to its destination. So there's 2 ways to look at it. Is your destination so clear that you just have to keep adjusting it to get there? Or is your destination and the journey to that is part of it, right? But, or is your destination a thing where it's, okay, this is what I want, but like, this journey is where the experience is. 10 years ago, when Sasha and I first met and started hanging out and all that sort of stuff, if you had told me in 10 years you're going to have 4 kids working together, having just moved from Phoenix, all of these things, I would have gone to Vegas. I would have taken all of my money and I would have put it on Nope. Like, magic can happen. You got to leave the space for the magic to happen. And I think, including myself, we can all make it very difficult for that too. Start listening to the different books, start reading the different books, start surrounding yourself with the people that will uplift you. Look at your friends. Are they the ones that, if you say something good happens, that like, fuck yeah, go for it, you can do more? Or are they the ones that are like, oh, I don't want you to have so much success because you're gonna They're going to outgrow me. And if that's kind of the thing. And your partner too. And if that's the case, how do you bring your partner along? Or how do you navigate that? I'm not here to give you relationship advice, but I couldn't imagine being in a relationship, in a marriage with my significant other and not be going in the same direction. Right? That would be miserable. But also sometimes you have to do the work to get to where you want to go so the other person can see it. And then they can go, oh, I see you leading by example. I'm ready to come on board. This roller coaster was really scary looking, but now that you've done it and I see that you've done it and you're safe and it's cool and I love it and the excitement that you have. All right, let me jump on. Let's go for a ride.
That's real.
Side note, Sasha's going to be so proud of all of my analogies because she says I'm the worst analogy giver. I've crushed them.
I love it. Yeah, I absolutely vouch for that level of integrity you were talking about. That's why I asked you on. It's so refreshing. And frankly, every encounter that we have had, I have left a better person in some way from every one of them.
That's really sweet. I'm trying not to cry because like that is just so touching, because it's nice to know. I mean, I know I tend to, especially when I'm speaking to women, I use Sasha and I because but I think the world of you. I think we think the world of you. But to know that, it's nice to hear for me. It's nice to hear that external validation. Not that I'm sitting here doing this to hey, I'm doing this but to hear it's nice to know that you made someone's life a little better or you made a difference. And if we all just did that, me included, again, everybody, me included, we're human, we're humans, but the world would be such a better place. So thank you. That was really sweet of you to say.
My pleasure. I'm really just trying to get others to enjoy the same experience. Where can they find you?
They can find us in a lot of different ways. We have a really wonderful, if you want to learn about marketing, we have our high-level mastermind group. It's group.whatsgood.co. The link will be there, but it's good with 2 U's. And let me see, what else? You can email us at hello@whatsgood, same thing, GUUD. And then I know there's going to be some resources if anybody wants them that they can do. We have 145 content ideas that no one else is sharing. We have the level, which is fantastic. So 145 is things you can create 6 months worth of social content. But the level is how you can level up, and it's not really necessarily practical application, but it's expansive. And then she has Multitudes, which is a 2-part audio series. We're really accessible. I know Mina will vouch for this. We respond to things where there's not some VA doing it. You can email us, you can join our group, you can download our stuff, whatever it is that works for you and how to connect with us, we're totally good with.
Awesome. And I will make sure the links to all of these things are in the show notes. And if you're listening to this or watching this, Guud Marketing, GUUD Marketing, has the most entertaining and educational email list that I subscribe to.
I will say we give good email.
Yes.
We do. And Sasha writes most of them, and then I'll jump in with a random one here and there. And it's really fun. The number of people that we hear that are I just love getting your emails. And it's, that's how we want to be. This is what we like to feel. So that's how we want to be. And you too can choose to be how you want to feel.
Thank you so much for coming on today, for everything that you do, and for being so real. This, I think, has been just an extremely high-level gift of having you on today, and I really, really appreciate it.
Well, I will say you're welcome, and thank you.
Thank you for listening to the 2K Days podcast. This episode was brought to you by the 2K Days Project, an international coalition of business leaders building a better world. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe. And for even more detailed strategies and tools, you're invited to join our email newsletter at www.2kdaysproject.com. See you next week.